Good evening. We're the Inforunners. I'm Al Garrett, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Execute.
Hey guys.
And today we do feel like we're in Groundhog Day, repeating the same take time and time again as we try to get this right. Why is it taking it so long? Because what we've got is rampant speculation on building the verse and what it means to build the verse, and why we think we've got the tools or will have the tools to build the verse. And I hear you say, but CIG are doing that. We don't have a part. But we actually think we really actually start to see our part in this, in the land sales that CIG did in November last year with the Pioneer, and also the ability to eventually build the outposts. And that kind of started the snowball effect going on. But before we actually go into the detail of what we actually think this entails, we actually want to introduce you to the 6 key areas where we've actually got our thinking from. And so that hopefully you guys can join us as we go on our rampant speculation tour. So Execute, do you want to introduce the first 3?
Sure thing. So I'm going to leave these up on the screen for the rest of the show so you can relate back to them and follow along. So yeah, obviously first up, as Algren mentioned, land claims, Pioneer and outposts. Ships like the Endeavour, the Retaliator, Carrack or Capitals with rooms, truck stops, small, medium and large, and their components similar to ships. And Algren, the last 3.
And the last 3 are the $19 million stretch goal for players to be able to control and run space stations. But also tied to that, Disco's idea or question to Todd Pappy about managing truck stops. Also, habs and hangars, what they'll be like, how we'll be able to interact with those. And finally, when discussing truck stops with Disco, Todd Pappy reminded him that we don't have to just put these in space. The facilities with a truck stop could be placed on planets. And so those 6 things are really feeding into this discussion as to what we could do in terms of building the verse.
So Algrid, how about you tell everyone what it is that we speculated on today and the scale of it, and then we'll go back and we'll kind of fill in all the details. So what are we talking about today?
What we're actually talking about is the idea of modular rooms, modular bases, even having truck stops that are modular and being able to change the interiors of them, whether it's shops or rooms, decorations or whatever. And at the base level, you've got your Pioneer. And when we look at our Pioneer, we can already see that's got different purposes. We can see when we fly around the verse, we've got outposts that are emergency habitation units. We've got outposts that are farms. We've got outposts that are mining centres. We've got outposts that are medical research labs. And we've got outposts that are illegal drug labs. And that gives it, but they're all very small. They may have several rooms attached to them, but we're all basically the same thing, with different interiors, modularity. Even on the outside, occasionally there's little bits and pieces to show what type of building, what type of work is going on in that location. So we've got modularity both in the building's exterior, but also on the interior as well. But if we scale that up and we start thinking, well, that's a start point. Where does it end? At the moment, we can't go 2 stories in our buildings. Maybe later on we can. We know that with some of our ships, we've got modular sections in our ships, and so they get bigger and they can change. We know that with truck stops, there are small, medium, and large. And so as that develops, and as we get control or have the ability to control or own, those things are going to come in and keep growing. And the question is, how far can we go? How big can we go? And so that's basically what we want to try and unpack.
What happens when we can actually make full-on cities and expand out that way? That type of thing. So I guess my question straight off the bat is, why would they go down this road? We know CIG are big on tools. We know that it would actually, if you could have a room tool, it'd allow you to make the rooms in all these different locations. It'd also allow them to make rooms in ships like the Endeavour and the Retaliator and the Carrack and the Capitals, and you could then make the rooms bespoke with code, so they only work in certain locations or only can be brought for certain ships or certain locations. So what are rooms essentially? So if we take our truck stop example where we have small, medium, and large, let's just say for argument's sake, they're kind of like slots, and you can actually access them on your Mobiglass like you do on a ship, and you can apply them into certain slots on your station. So a small station might have 6, and a large one might have 24. And what that could be is that you basically can put small, medium, or large. So maybe a large room takes 6 slots, and a medium takes 4, and a small takes 2, or whatever, right? But the point is, they're like a grid system that you can fill up, and you get to decide what goes in there and what you want to put in there. So you can customize your truck stop, as an example, to look exactly as you want it to look. And I guess going on from that, Algrid, what would be the next part of it? I guess that would be the property management part of this. Is if you're actually running these truck stops, you're going to need someone to look after them.
Yeah, well, even if you're looking after your outpost yourself, we know that outposts are going to wear out with time, and so you've got to make a choice of how you're going to look after it, what things you're going to do to maintain it, how are you going to replace the power supply, how are you going to repair that broken window, how are you going to repair that worn out shield generator. And so that is going to generate missions where you're actually bringing missions in or getting them yourself. It's going to generate jobs where you might need someone else to do that, or security. It'll change the way in which if you're leasing out a shop, if you've got a truck stop and you're leasing out a shop, it'll mean who do you lease it out to? Do you lease it out to an NPC? Do you lease it out to a player? All of those things will become part of that managerial aspect. And if we run our outpost,
do you get security for the outpost?
Yeah, and if we run our outpost well, or we run our truck stop well, then we make money. And if we don't run it well, we might not make money. It might cost us.
So a part of that running of the outpost would be components. So maybe we should go some of the components we've speculated on that could actually be a part of these outposts.
Yeah, well, the first one that came to mind as I was thinking about the outpost was the power supply. How are they powered? Are they using geothermal vents? Are they using solar power? Are they using nuclear fission? Are they using the same components that we use in our ships? We don't really know. That hasn't been explained. And if they're using the same components in our ships, what size goes with what building?
Much like ships, you'll also need life support. Much like outposts, you're going to need life support. And it's the same thing on these truck stops and other buildings.
Just like our ships have amenities for toilets and water reclamation and other things, our outposts will need those types of things as well. And they will generate missions in themselves. If you've got a nuclear fission power plant, you're going to have toxic waste you need removed. And what's one of the missions we see in the PU at the moment? Some of the bases have toxic waste removal. We don't care where you build it, we just don't want it here. And so that'll generate missions. If you're using solar power, that might mean, okay, you're not generating waste, but your solar power panels wear out, so you've actually got to bring in the parts to repair them. And all of that type comes into the management, but it also is generating missions for either NPCs or players to do. And as NPCs or players continually come to your outpost or your truck stop or your facility, what's happening is you're actually creating trade lanes. And so you're actually growing the verse.
They're all feeding into each other as well, because when they come to your station, they're going to buy food from the people in your shops or equipment or whatever they need as well. And it all becomes cyclic, just like the real world. I was going to say 2 other little components could be things like defense with turrets, or people that are actually in ships defending it, so you got to pay them, or you could have different types of turrets, and again, they may need ammo or require extra energy from the station itself to fire their lasers.
And that comes into how you might decide what you're going to put into your little settlement area. If you've only got X number of power units, then that's going to have an impact. You could decide, I'm going to be a slumlord. I'm not going to worry about security. I'm just going to have El Cheapo shops everywhere, or El Cheapo habitation, Grimhex. And it's going to attract, it's the dreaded snake. It's going to attract the lower end of life, the pirates and the ne'er-do-wells. But if you then if you decide I'm going to have a secure area. I'm going to make sure I've invested in security forces. I'm going to make sure I've invested in weapons. That's going to reduce the amount of power I've got for other resources. The advantage is, if I've got a really nice, secure facility, that's going to attract a higher clientele. You might get that top-end pub, or that top-end club, or that really fancy hospital. Whereas if you just go slumlord, you might just get run-down Kasaba shops. I know Kasaba probably hate me for saying that. But...
Now, another advantage of this is if you use components from ships, or even use the component pipeline to make new components. Again, it speeds up development because developers already know how to do it, or you're reusing the same assets again. So it just makes sense. And we know that CIG already do this with their tools. It makes no difference to do it again with development assets. I think the next part, Algrid, is where would it lead? Where would this all lead? What are the types of things?
I think even before we do that is even that idea of the components interacting with each other. So
yes, that's true. Sorry, I forgot.
So you've got, say, do I have in my truck stop? Do I give up one of my shop places and put in a green park, so for recreation? And if I'd put in a park like that, how does that impact on life support and water reclamation and waste removal? You know, waste being used for fertilizer, plant trees helping with the oxygen supply. Does it raise morale? All of those types of things come into play, and I think also feed off and feed into the original economics document as well, which we will put a link down below.
Yeah. Another part is the from the player habs and hangars. Now, they've mentioned that the habs they're building on Hurston are going to be editable. We know our hangars are editable. You can move things around and do them the way you want. Imagine if you had your own shop, like the bar that Algrid mentioned, and you could put it out the bar where you want it on that corner. You can put the stools where you want, the cafes and the bottles and all that where you want. And that way it becomes your bar. Much like when they're building... these stations, they're going, we're using 70% procedural, and then we're coming in and putting in some original art assets. Now, if we can do that ourselves, we make that our bar, our shop, whatever it is, it'll become ours. But also, as Algrid was mentioning at the start of the show, that allows us to help them build the verse. And also, they can do that as well, but also NPCs can do that as well. So if we can get NPCs that procedurally generate their own houses, it's all going to build out over time. And I think a part of this, Algrid, is if, for instance, say we build a town, you and I, and lots of other people came to join us, and the NPCs came, does that all of a sudden mean we need bigger and better buildings? So does CIG chuck in a skyscraper there that can then start to fill as well? So as cities grow and become real cities, can CIG play a part in that in the construction process and speed it up and make it a little bit like real life?
Yeah, and that kind of brings me back to one of the questions I can remember being asked when the Pioneer was first out, and people were saying, well, if we build a settlement and we put all our outposts there, will the NPCs come? If we build it, will they come? And so players were already thinking along this idea of building settlements, building cities, and going faster. Players are already wanting to know, when can we build up? Players back then were even asking, can I put my my outpost on an asteroid? Can I put my outpost in space and kind of make it into a space station? And so we've already got people asking those questions, and so there's clearly a desire by players to do that. It may not be the vast majority of players, but there's certainly a group of players that would like to manage a truck stop, or manage a base, or manage a series of outposts. And all of this just gives us that ability to build the verse, but live in the verse the way we want. And it just seems what we've got just seems to aid that.
So Algrid, as a final question today before we go, what is it that we want to... What are we asking? What is the question we want to leave these guys asking themselves?
Well, the question you asked before is, where does it lead? And I think part of that is, if we look at outposts and buildings in the same way that we look at ships, and we've tried to show or tried to hint that they may use the same components. They may use have the same missions. If we look at ships, what's the biggest ship we can own? The biggest ship we can currently own is the Javelin. But is that the biggest ship we can actually control? We've been told that we will be able to find Bengals and fight over Bengals and control those. We will be able to control, in the same way, when we look at bases. We know from a $90 million stretch goal that players are going to be able to compete to own and control and run space stations. And yet, we also know we can own outposts. And so the question is, what's the biggest facility that we can own and run in? What's the Javelin equivalent in buildings? And what's, I suppose, the step of what we can control and run but not own? And I think both of those really come into, I think it just makes the verse a much more intense, a much more vibrant place when we can actually not only just fly our ships, but actually control property and run property and develop property.
Yeah, so we're going to have things in space to fight over and on land, and it just makes it all-inclusive universe, like what we kind of discovered with ground combat. We know that's going to be a much more rich experience now. The last question I'm going to ask here is, does it hint at the possibility that the Game Changer by Drake this year, coming at CitizenCon, we know that it's a game changer from CitizenCon, being a truck stop itself, or a ship that can build truck stops, similar to the Pioneer Outpost? Is that now a possibility? So I want to leave you guys with that question. I want to hear what you guys think of our speculation here today. It took us probably about August to about now to work on this, because we've been unpacking it and going backward and forth with lots of different ideas. Agra, is there anything you want to say about how long this took? Or
today, 19 billion outtakes, I think.
Yeah, because
we started at dawn. It's now.
But yeah, it's been taking a little while to unpack this one. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We hope you guys are thinking. We're really excited by it. We think it makes a lot of sense. We think we can see it working in ships already. We can see it working in outposts and further buildings that come along. And we think that that's the way they're going to go, because it just allows them to fill out the space so much quicker if we help them do it. It's just that simple. But yeah, I want to hear what you guys have to say about the Drake, and could that be a possibility? A Drake actually making more truck stops or more buildings for us to use.
And that RTV on Persistent Universe really feeds into that idea as well. So if you haven't watched that episode with Disco and Todd Pappy, it is worth having a look at.
Put another one up there.
We'll put a card up there.
Right now.
And you'll be able to check that out. But yeah, so if you like what we're on about, feel free to give us a like. If you don't, feel free to give us a thumbs down, but tell us why. Tell us we're off our head or off our rockers. And
I'm always up for a chat, so come and jump on Discord and actually talk with us about this directly, because I think this is going to be a really good discussion starter. I think it's a really exciting way of things are going to go. We might not have it exactly on the head, but I think we're heading in the right direction. All right, so this has been... no, that's not Execute down there. Who's that down there again? And I've been Execute. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.
How great I'm still